This will cover the general section of the FAA Oral A&P Exam. What is considered the basic building block of all matter? The atom. What is the most important law applicable to the study of electricity? Ohm's law. What is Ohm's law expressed as an equation? Voltage equals current times resistance, or current equals voltage divided by resistance, or resistance equals voltage divided by current. What are the elements of Ohm's law? Voltage, current, and resistance. What are four sources of electrical energy? Thermal, light, pressure, and chemical. What does a basic DC electrical circuit consist of? A source, battery, resistance or load, a light bulb, and conductors, wires. What represents capacitance in an AC circuit? A capacitor. What is the function of a capacitor? To store electricity. What is the unit of measure for capacitance? Farad. What is the standard unit of measure for frequency? Hertz. What is the basic component that only allows current to flow in one direction? A diode. What is inductance? When voltage is induced by magnetic flux lines in a coil in an AC circuit, the induced voltage is opposite in direction to the applied voltage and opposes any change in the alternating current. The ability to store electrical energy in electromagnetic fields. What is one advantage of AC circuits over DC circuits in an aircraft? AC can be transmitted over long distances more readily and more economically than DC. Or space and weight can be saved. Or circuit breakers will operate satisfactorily at altitude. AC devices are smaller and simpler. Or most 24-volt aircraft systems have special equipment that requires a certain amount of 400 cycle AC current. What is the definition of a short circuit? An unintentionally low resistant path between a component, conductor, and ground. What is an example of an inductor in a magneto? The coil. What is impedance? The total opposition to the flow of current in an electrical circuit. What causes opposition to the flow of current in an AC circuit? Inductive and capacitance resistance. What is the unit of measurement for impedance? Ohms. What is the general purpose of a resistor? To limit current. How may the value of a small fixed resistor be determined? By the color bands on the resistor. What are two things that happen when current flows through a conductor? A magnetic field is generated and the conductor heats up. What is the common name for the lines of force that make up a field surrounding a magnet? Magnetic flux lines. What is magnetism? The property of an object to attract certain metallic substances. What is the difference between permanent and temporary magnets? When an external magnetizing force is removed, permanent magnets retain their magnetism for an extended time. Temporary magnets quickly lose most of their magnetism. What is the concept that describes the relationship between electricity and magnetism? Electromagnetism. What are the four factors that affect the resistance of an electrical conductor? The wire gauge, length, temperature, and material. What is the unit of measurement of power in a DC circuit? Watt. What is a kilowatt? 1000 watts. In a DC circuit, what occurs when voltage is increased while resistance remains constant? There will be an increase in current. What are the three types of DC electrical circuits? Series, parallel, and complex, or series and parallel. A 24-volt lead-acid battery has how many cells? 12 cells, and each cell is rated at approximately 2 volts. What is the most frequent cause of damage to a solid-state component and integrated circuits? Electrostatic discharge from the human body due to careless handling. What are the units that battery capacity is measured in? Amp hours. What should be the specific gravity of the electrolyte in a fully charged lead-acid battery? It should be between 1.275 and 1.3. What instrument is used to determine the specific gravity of electrolyte in a lead-acid battery? A hydrometer. Why can a hydrometer not be used to determine the charge of a nickel-cadmium battery? The electrolyte's specific gravity does not change with the state of charge. When using a hydrometer to check the change of a lead-acid battery, at what temperature must a correction factor be applied to the reading? Adjustments must be made if the temperature of the electrolyte is above 90 degrees Fahrenheit or below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. What is the effect of temperature on specific gravity of the electrolyte when checking a lead-acid battery? Battery temperature changes electrolyte density only when greater than 90 degrees Fahrenheit or less than 70 degrees Fahrenheit. What is electromagnetic induction? It is the transfer of electrical energy by means of a magnetic field, lines of flux. Transferring voltage from one conductor to another without physically touching. This is the principle of transformer operation. How are battery compartments protected against corrosion? They are coated with special corrosion-resistant paint. What should be the correct electrolyte level in a properly serviced battery? It should be approximately 3/8 inches above the plates. If the battery has baffle plates above the cell plates, the electrolyte level should be up to the hole in the baffle plates in each cell. What are paralleling generators and how is the load distributed? This is when two or more generators are operated at the same time to supply power for a load that must be shared equally. Describe a no-trip circuit breaker. A trip-free breaker makes it impossible to manually hold the circuit closed when excessive current is flowing. Can you store NiCad and lead-acid batteries together? No. The fumes from the lead-acid battery can contaminate the electrolyte in the NiCad battery. Why should nickel-cadmium batteries and lead-acid batteries not be serviced in the same area? The electrolyte and the fumes from lead-acid batteries can contaminate the electrolyte in the nickel-cadmium battery. What could cause a nickel-cadmium battery to fail to deliver its rated capacity? Cell imbalance or faulty cells. What is the result of an imbalanced cell in a nickel-cadmium battery? When a cell has a low internal resistance, the current will increase across the cell, causing it to heat up. What happens to the specific gravity of the electrolyte in a lead-acid battery when the temperature changes? The specific gravity readings on a hydrometer will vary with temperature variations. For example, as the temperature of an electrolyte increases, the specific gravity reading will be higher, and colder electrolytes will have a lower apparent reading. What is an LED? A light-emitting diode. What is SLA battery? Sealed lead-acid battery. What is the basic unit of measure for inductance? Henry. What prevents reverse current flow in a DC alternator? Reverse current cutout. How many wires may be installed on a single terminal lug? 4. How do you identify wire types? Lettering on the insulation. Name some functions of a multimeter. Measure voltage, current, and resistance. How would a technician connect a multimeter in a circuit to read its current? By inserting the multimeter leads in series by opening or breaking the circuit. Name 2 types of resistors. Variable and fixed. What is the difference between an OR logic gate and an AND logic gate? An OR logic gate needs one input or the other input to have an output. The AND logic gate needs one input and the other input to have an output. What are two materials that conductors are made of? Aluminum and copper. What component changes electrical energy of a given voltage into electrical energy at a different voltage level? Steps electricity either up or down. Transformer. Describe a capacitor. Two plates with a dielectric in the middle. What is an inverter? An inverter changes electricity from DC power to AC power. What is the difference between the two theories, conventional current flow theory and electron flow? Conventional current flow theory is a visualization of current as flowing from positive to negative. In actual practice, electrons in a circuit flow from negative to positive. Electron theory. What is Kirchhoff's voltage law? Kirchhoff's voltage law states that algebraic sum of all voltages around a closed path or loop is zero. What electrical law is most used in troubleshooting? Ohm's law. What is the right-hand motor rule? When the index finger of the right hand is pointed in the direction of the magnetic field and the second finger in the direction of current flow, the thumb indicates the direction the current-carrying wire moves. What flows around a conductor? A magnetic field, electrical current, and electrons. What is the definition of power? The rate of energy consumption and conversion within that system, the amount of energy used or converted in a given amount of time. When is a full section view used on an aircraft drawing? When interior construction or hidden features of an object cannot be shown clearly by exterior views. What type of lines are used on aircraft drawings to indicate hidden views, center lines, and alternate position lines? A hidden view line is a medium width line made up of short dashes. Center lines are thin lines composed of alternating long and short dashes. Alternate position lines are medium width lines composed of one long and two short dashes. How are dimension lines shown on aircraft drawings? Dimension lines are solid and usually broken at midpoint for insertion of measurement indications. What is a sketch for a repair? It is a basic drawing that shows specific information and provides minimum detail needed to manufacture a part. How may an aircraft drawing of a part be drawn to bring out pertinent details? By drawing a detailed view at a larger scale than the principal view. What type of drawing is most helpful in troubleshooting a system? A schematic. Define tolerance as used in aircraft drawings. The difference between the plus and minus allowable dimensions of a part. Define clearance as used in aircraft drawings. Clearance is the dimension given for the space between parts. What is a fuselage station number? It is the distance from the datum measured in inches along the longitudinal axis. What information is given in the title block of a blueprint? The drawing number, the name of the part or assembly, the scale, the date, the name of the firm, the name of the draftsman, the checker, and the approving official. Where's the title block usually found on an aircraft drawing? In the lower right corner. Why are dimensions used and how are they shown on the aircraft drawings? Dimensions are solid, narrow lines broken at midpoint for the insertion of measurements. They are used to indicate the size of an object. How can a change to an aircraft drawing be identified? By its revision letter. The revision letters are usually listed in a table next to the title block or in the corner of the drawing. What is the bill of materials associated with aircraft blueprints? It is a list of materials and parts necessary for fabrication or assembly of a component or system. Why are symbols used by manufacturers when drawing aircraft blueprints? Symbols are a type of shorthand used in drawings. They express the characteristics of a component with a minimum amount of drawing or writing. What is an orthographic projection? A way of illustrating an object in a drawing by showing different views at right angles to each other, such as front and side views. How many views are required to determine the shape of an object? Three views: front, right, and top. What is the purpose of one-view drawings? They are used for objects of uniform thickness, such as gaskets, shims, and plates. What are schematic diagrams generally used for? They are mainly used for troubleshooting. What property is essential for metals used in making wire and tubing? The property of ductility. What is a suitable non-destructive testing method for detecting surface cracks on aluminum castings and forgings? The dye-penetrant inspection method detects surface cracks with equal success on aluminum, magnesium, brass, copper, and titanium. It can also be used on ceramics, plastics, and glass. List the steps in a dye-penetrant inspection. One, thoroughly clean the material's surface. 2, apply the penetrant for the specified dwell time. 3, remove the penetrant with water or emulsifying cleaner. 4, dry the part. 5, apply the developer. 6, inspect the results. Describe the procedure for performing a magnetic particle inspection. Thoroughly clean all grease, oil, and dirt from the metal part, which must be of ferrous material, such as iron or steel. Magnetize the part and then apply ferromagnetic particles, either held in liquid suspension or in dry powder form, to the area to be inspected. If a discontinuity is present, the magnetized particles will form a grip length pattern in the approximate shape of the discontinuity. What are the two types of self-locking nuts? All metal and fiber lock. What is the general rule for using self-locking nuts? Do not use self-locking nuts at joints which are subject to rotation. What type of cable is used in primary control systems? Extra flexible 7x19 cable. How can the correct grip length of a bolt be determined? The grip length should equal the total thickness of the materials being joined together. The grip of a bolt is the unthreaded portion of the bolt shank. The length of an AN standard bolts are measured in what fraction? Eighths of an inch. What does the triangle mean on the head of a steel bolt? That it is a close tolerance bolt. What numbers are used for close tolerance bolts? AN 173 through AN 186 for hex bolts, and NAS 80 through NAS 86 for countersunk. What is the difference between a standard bolt and a close tolerance bolt? A close tolerance bolt is machined to more precise dimensions and is used in high performance applications. A solid rivet diameter is always measured in what fraction? (30/2 of an inch). Describe a riv nut. It is a threaded body that is expanded to the aircraft structure. What is the purpose of a channel nut and a nut plate? Both nuts allow a screw or bolt to be installed without needing to hold the nut with a wrench. What are common materials for cotter pins to be made from? Low carbon steel and stainless steel. What is the smallest cable that can be used in primary control systems? (1/8 in diameter). What should be the depth of penetration when making a fillet weld? Penetration should be 25 to 50% of the thickness of base metal. What precision measuring instruments are used to measure outside dimensions? Outside micrometer and vernier calipers. What term describes a metal that is based on iron? Ferrous alloy. What should be the width of the weld bead and depth of penetration when making a butt weld? The bead width should be 3 to 5 times the thickness of the base metal, and there should be 100% penetration. What system is used to identify AN-type aircraft bolts? Aircraft bolts have code markings on the bolt heads for identification. Bolt diameter is measured in 1/16 of an inch, and length is measured in 1/8 of an inch increments. What is the difference between a close tolerance and a regular AN bolt? Close tolerance bolts are used in applications where the bolted joint is subject to severe vibrations and load reversals. Also, close tolerance bolts are machined to a more precise standards and must be driven in by a hammer. What are the steps for solution heat treating aluminum alloys? The alloy must be heated to a predetermined temperature, heat-soaked for a specified period, and then rapidly quenched to a relatively low temperature. In what state is aluminum alloy immediately after solution heat treating and quenching? The alloy is in a comparatively soft state, so the material must be naturally aged or precipitation hardened. What is done to prevent certain aluminum alloy rivets from becoming hard after heat treating and quenching? The rivets are stored in a refrigerator at a temperature lower than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The rivets will remain soft for several days. They are also called icebox rivets. What do rivet head markings indicate? The alloy of the rivet. Why is alloy steel that is responsive to heat treatment usually less suitable for welding? Because of its tendency to become brittle and lose its ductility around the weld. Why should steel be normalized after welding or machining? To remove internal stress of the metal, thereby reducing brittleness. What are two methods of case hardening? Carburizing and nitriding. What are the characteristics of a cold weld? A cold weld has improper penetration and cold lapse caused by insufficient heat. It appears rough and irregular, and its edges are not feathered into the base metal. What should be used to make a visual inspection of a weld? A magnifying glass of at least 10 times. What tools are used to measure the outside dimensions of shafts, thickness of sheet metal stock, diameter of drills, or for many other similar applications? Outside micrometer or caliper. Name some type of non-destructive testing used on non-ferrous materials. Eddy current, dye penetrant, X-ray, coin tap, and visual inspection. Which non-destructive test method can be performed without removing the surface coatings such as primer, paint, and anodized films, and is effective in detecting surface and subsurface corrosion? Eddy current inspection method. What is the most common type of corrosion? Surface corrosion. What does a 1/4-20 bolt mean? Bolt diameter and thread count. Why should a micrometer be periodically calibrated? To help ensure micrometer accuracy. A solid rivet length is measured in what fractional increments? Sixteenths of an inch. What are some types of washers used on aircraft? Spring lock washer, flat washer, lock tooth washer, tab washer, finishing washer. What is an MSDS? Material Safety Data Sheet. What class bolts are used on aircraft? Class 3 bolts. What occurs during the preparation stages when penetrant inspection liquid is applied to and then removed from a part that is cracked? Penetrating liquid enters the crack and remains there to make the crack visible after developer is applied. What do the markings on the head of a solid shank rivet indicate? The material they are made of and their strength. How can the torque for a bolt or nut be determined when the torque is not listed in maintenance procedures? From the information found in the standard torque table. Which steel alloy is noted for its toughness and is most used for aircraft tubular structure, such as frame members, engine mounts, landing gear parts, and other structural parts? Chrome molybdenum steel. How is work hardening obtained? By cold working metal. What portable hardness tester is commonly used for testing aluminum alloys, copper, brass, and other relatively soft material? Barcode tester. What is the main difference between thermoplastics and thermosetting resins? Thermoplastic resins can be softened by heat and become hard again. Thermosetting resins do not soften when heated and will char and burn rather than melt. What is the purpose for thermoplastic and thermosetting resins? Thermoplastic acrylic is used for windshields. Thermosetting resins are commonly used as matrix materials in composites. Name the type of materials commonly used as the reinforcing component in structural composite laminates. Kevlar, fiberglass, or graphite. Name the substance commonly used as the matrix material in structural composite laminates. Polyester resin and epoxy resin. Name one advantage of using pre-impregnated materials over non-pre-impregnated materials in the construction or repair of composite components. Pre-impregnated fabrics contains the proper amount of matrix. The reinforcing fibers are completely and evenly permeated with matrix. The matrix has the correct proportions of resin and hardener. What class threads are used on aircraft? Class 3 threads. What is another name for aramid material? Kevlar. What is a plug used to repair threads? Helicoil. Name two measurement systems used for aircraft hardware. SAE and metric. How would you repair a thread which is damaged? Helicoil. Why is TIG preferred over flux welding? It produces the highest quality weld. What are three differences between aluminum and copper wire? Size, weight, and price. What kind of bolts are used in landing gear? Steel. What type of solder bonds wires? Soft solder. If due to the configuration of an aircraft, it is impossible for a person to mark an aircraft in accordance with 14 CFR Part 45.21 and 45.23 through 45.33, what must be done? The owner/operator may apply to the FAA for different marking procedures. What are the 5 common forms of corrosion? Fretting, dissimilar metal, intergranular, surface, and steel corrosion. Name at least 3 factors that influence corrosion. The temperature, type of metal, availability of electrolytes and dissimilar metals, condition of protective coating. What are the 2 general conditions that may cause stress corrosion cracking? Sustained tensile stress and a corrosive environment. What is the cause of fretting corrosion? It occurs when 2 mating surfaces, which are normally at rest with respect to each other, are subject to slight relative motion. It is characterized by pitting of the surfaces and the generation of large quantities of fine debris between the surfaces, identified as smoking rivets. What is the principal cause of filiform corrosion? Surfaces that have not had a proper chemical treatment prior to painting. Where is intergranular corrosion most likely to occur? Typically along the grain boundaries of extruded materials. What is exfoliation corrosion? An advanced form of intergranular corrosion. What is another name for dissimilar metal corrosion? Galvanic corrosion. What are the factors which affect the type of corrosion? The form of corrosion varies with atmospheric conditions, size and shape of the metal, the type of metal, and the corrosion-producing agents present. What methods are used for removing rust from aircraft materials? Except on highly stressed steel surfaces like oleostruts, the use of abrasive papers and compounds, small power buffers and buffing compounds, hand wire brushing, and steel wool are all acceptable methods of removing rust. What is an acceptable method for removing surface corrosion from titanium? Several methods may be used, including a stainless steel brush, aluminum oxide sandpaper, Scotch-Brite, abrasive blasting using glass beads, or hand polishing using aluminum polish and a soft cotton cloth. What specific operations are part of corrosion preventative maintenance? Adequate cleaning, periodic lubrication, detailed inspection, prompt corrosion treatment, touch-up of damaged paint, sealing, use of protective covers, and daily wipe down of exposed critical areas. Name the steps for corrosion removal. Clean and strip the corroded areas. Remove as much corrosion as possible. Neutralize any residual material remaining in pits and crevices. Restore protective surface films and paint. What tools are approved for cleaning corroded anodized surfaces? Fiber bristle brushes, aluminum wool, and aluminum wire brushes. What is used to keep corrosion from forming on aluminum alloy? an oxide coating, or aluminum cladding. What can be used to repair the anodized surface of an aluminum alloy part? Aerodynamics or other chemical conversion coatings. What product should be used to clean an aircraft engine? A fine spray of kerosene or solvent. What should be used to clean grease, fuel, or oil from aircraft rubber tires? Soap and water. Why should only recommended cleaners be used on aircraft fabric and plastic? Their use causes less degradation of the material. Name 5 areas on an aircraft that are more prone to corrosion. Battery compartments, bilge areas, wheel wells and landing gear, flap recesses, lavatory, galley, and other areas where water might be entrapped. What form of corrosion can be found in battery compartments? Direct chemical corrosion. Why are piano-type hinges prime locations for corrosion? Piano hinges use dissimilar metals, steel pins and aluminum hinges, and tend to trap contaminants between the pin and the hinge surfaces. What is used to neutralize a lead-acid battery electrolyte? A solution of baking soda and water. What is the difference between wet wash and dry wash aircraft cleaning? Wet wash cleaning is used to remove oil, grease, carbon deposits, and soil, except for corrosion and oxide films. Dry wash cleaning is used to remove film, dust, and small accumulations of dirt. What are types of light-duty and heavy-duty aircraft cleaning agents? Light-duty cleaning agents are soap and synthetic detergent. Heavy-duty cleaning agents are solvents and emulsion-type cleaners. What would you do before cleaning a windscreen? Wet the surface before cleaning to prevent scratching. What does filiform corrosion look like, and where can it be found? Filiform corrosion appears to look like thread or worm-like puffiness in the painted surface. It occurs between the metal surface and protective coating. How is the inside of structural tubing prevented from corroding? Hot linseed oil can be poured into the hole, then the excess is drained. Why should aluminum metal polish not be used on anodized aluminum surfaces? It will remove the oxide coat. Why is the aircraft cleaned before inspection? It enables the mechanic to conduct a more accurate inspection. What geographical location promotes corrosion? Coastal regions. In the early days of aviation, what tubing material was used extensively in aviation fluid applications? Copper tubing. What are 2 types of commonly used fluid lines used in aircraft plumbing? Metal tubing or flexible hose and fittings. How is metal tubing sized? By outside diameter and wall thickness. Outside diameter is measured fractionally in 1/16 of an inch. What material should be selected for high pressure rigid fluid lines? Annealed or 1/4 hard, corrosion resistant steel. What type of material should fittings be made of when used with stainless steel tubing? Stainless steel. What percentage of flattening is allowed when bending metal tubing? 25% max. Must maintain 75% of the original tube diameter. What precautions should be taken when routing fluid lines adjacent to electrical wiring? Route the fluid lines below the electrical wiring and maintain a clearance of at least 6 inches whenever possible. In no case should fluid lines and electrical wiring be closer than half of an inch. Ensure that both the wiring and the fluid lines are fastened to the aircraft structure by clamps or other methods that will maintain the separation. What is the purpose of the identification strip running along the length of a flexible hose? The stripe is called a ley line and indicates if the hose has twisted during installation. There is no allowable twist. What are some synthetic materials commonly used to manufacture flexible hoses? Butadiene, butyl, ethylene propylene diene rubber, neoprene, and Teflon. How are standard AN type and AC type fluid line fittings identified? AN fluid line fittings are colored either blue or black, while AC type fittings are usually gray or yellow. AN fittings have coarser threads and they have a small shoulder between the threads and the 37-degree flare cone. The AC fittings are completely threaded all the way to the 35-degree flare cone. What is the purpose of using quick disconnect couplings in fluid systems? They provide a means of quickly disconnecting a line without a loss of fluid or air entering the system. Quick disconnect couplings are installed at locations where frequent uncoupling of the line is required for inspection and maintenance. Each half has a valve that is open when coupled together and spring-loaded to close when disconnected. How is flexible hose sized? By the inside diameter in 1/16 of an inch increments. How much slack must be left in a flexible hose during installation? 5 to 8% of the total hose length must be allowed for freedom of movement under pressure. How often should flexible hoses be clamped in place? Every 24 inches. Name considerations when installing flexible hose assemblies. Slack, flexing, twisting, bending, clearance, and clamps. What pressure is used to proof test a flexible hose assembly? Typically 1.5 times the recommended operating pressure of the hose. What are 3 parts of military standard tube fitting? The body, the sleeve, and the nut. What will be the result of over-tightening a flareless tube fitting? The nut drives the cutting edge of the sleeve deeply into the tube, causing the tube to be weakened. What are the 2 kinds of flares used in aircraft plumbing systems? A single flare and a double flare. What is the difference between automotive and aviation flares? Aviation flares should be 37 degrees and automotives are 45 degrees. What is the advantage of flexible Teflon hose over rubber hose? Teflon hoses have better resistance to chemical and a higher strength property at higher temperatures. What precautions should be taken when deburring and inspecting the flared end of a tube? Care should be taken that the tubing is not cracked or that the wall thickness is not reduced by the deburring process. What type of rubber is used in flexible lines that carry phosphate ester hydraulic fluid? Butyl. What type of information is on a hose ley line? The type of hose and the quarter and year of manufacture. What are the identification marks usually found on flexible rubber hoses? Ley line, hose size, manufacturer, date of manufacture, pressure, and temperature limits. How can you tell that a flexible hose has been installed in a twisted position? By the identification strip running along the hose length. In addition to being securely clamped in place, how should metal, fuel, oil, and hydraulic lines be installed in an aircraft? They should be electrically grounded to the aircraft structure. Scratches and nicks may be repaired if they are less than what percentage of wall thickness? 10%. How is flared tubing affected by over-tightening of the fitting? The flare is likely to be damaged. When inspecting fittings, how may a flareless fitting be distinguished from a flared tube type? There's no flare cone and no space between the threads and the end of the fitting. What is the purpose of a sleeve on a flared tube connection? The nut fits over the sleeve, and when tightened, draws the sleeve and tubing flare tightly against the male fitting to form the seal. What is the distance between hose identification marks? 9 inches. What was a common tubing in old aircraft? Copper tubing. What would cause a flare to be crooked? Improperly cutting the tube. Why should no one ever approach a single rotor helicopter from the rear? The tail rotor is invisible when operating. What is the procedure for extinguishing an induction system fire that occurs during starting of a reciprocating aircraft engine? Continue cranking the engine to try to suck the fire out. If cranking the engine does not work, then extinguish the fire using CO2. What is the purpose of pulling a propeller through by hand for 2 or 3 revolutions prior to starting a radial or inverted engine? To detect hydrolock. Any liquid present in the cylinder will be indicated by abnormal effort required to rotate the propeller, or by the propeller stopping abruptly during rotation. What damage is likely to occur if excessive force is exerted on the crankshaft when there's liquid lock? The force can bend or break a connecting rod, or permanently damage the cylinder. What information must be located on or near fuel filler openings and oil filler openings? For fuel filler openings, the word fuel and the minimum fuel grade or designation for the engine. Oil filler openings require the word oil to be marked at or near the filler cap. Why must aircraft and fuel trucks be grounded together with a grounding cable? To eliminate the buildup of static electricity that could result in explosion. Describe the system used to designate performance rating of aviation gasoline. For fuels below grade 100, octane numbers are used. For fuel above grade 100, the numbers represent the performance rating of the fuel compared to 100% isooctane. What would be the result of operating an aircraft reciprocating engine using a lower grade of avgas than that specified for the engine? There would be a loss of engine power, efficiency, and possible detonation. What color is low lead 100 dyed? Blue. What are the functions of tetraethyl lead in avgas? To lubricate and reduce detonation. Why should an aviation mechanic know the meaning of the standard light signals which are used to control tower operations? If radio communication is not possible, the light signals may be used for taxi control when an aircraft must be taxied to another part of the airport. What type of knot is typically used when securing an aircraft outdoors with a rope? A bowline knot. Which publication lists the standard FAA hand signals a taxi signalman should use? The FAA Airman's Information Manual. What is the result of mixing aviation gasoline with jet fuel in a turbine engine? When aviation gasoline is mixed with jet fuel, the tetraethyl lead in the gasoline will form deposits on the turbine blades and vanes. Continued use of mixed fuel may cause a loss of engine efficiency. However, there will be no detrimental effect on the engine if such usage is on a limited basis. What may result if aviation gasoline that is contaminated with jet fuel is used in a reciprocating engine? Gasoline which is contaminated with jet fuel is unsafe for use in a reciprocating engine and will result in complete engine failure. When towing a large aircraft with a tow tractor, what brakes should be used to stop the aircraft? When towing an aircraft, always apply the tractor brakes for slowing and stopping. What are the safety requirements when starting and running a power plant? Use the correct checklist. Position the aircraft into the wind, check the prop blast area, secure the external power cart, and use a fire guard. What are safety precautions when operating a drill press? Wear eye and ear protection. Clamp the workpiece securely, adjust for the proper RPM, stop machine completely before adjusting workpiece, and clean the area when finished. Why is a tire cage recommended when inflating aircraft tires? To prevent possible personal injury should the tire or wheel fail. What type of fire can a CO2 extinguisher be used on? Class A, B, and C type fires. When refueling an aircraft, what precautions should be taken? Use the correct fuel. Properly ground the aircraft and refueling unit. Protect aircraft surface from hose or nozzle damage. What is meant by the term hot start when starting an aircraft turbine engine? A hot start occurs when the engine operating temperature exceeds specified limits during start. What are some typical ground operation hazards? Foreign object damage, other aircraft, fire, noise levels, jet intake areas. Why are water type fire extinguishers not recommended for Class C fires? There's a possibility of electrocution. Why are fingers not curled over the prop when hand propping an engine? Kickback from the engine may break them or draw your body into the blade path. What weather conditions do you put aircraft skis on? Ice and snow. What should you do before washing an aircraft? Ensure static ports and pitot tubes are covered and ensure all panels and doors are closed and installed. What is the minimum pressure for servicing an oxygen bottle? 50 psi. What is the difference between max takeoff weight and max ramp weight? Maximum ramp weight, the total weight of a loaded aircraft including all fuel. It is greater than the takeoff weight due to the fuel that will be burned during the taxi and run-up operations. Why should you face an aircraft into the wind? For cooling. An aircraft is in storage for 30 to 60 days. Which type of storage period is this? Temporary storage. What are the steps in refueling an aircraft? 1. Position the aircraft in the proper position. 2. Ground the aircraft and the fuel delivery system. 3. Bond the aircraft to the fuel delivery equipment. 4. Do not damage the aircraft. 5. Use the correct fuel.
Irregular and haphazard inspections invariably result in what? The result is a gradual and certain deterioration of an aircraft. How is the aircraft electrical system protected from lightning? Grounding straps. What would you do if you had a respirator mask on with a good seal but could smell vapor? Replace the filter. What fluid do you use to leak check an oxygen system? Soapy liquid that does not contaminate the oxygen system. What are the 4 different kinds of fuel leakage? Slow seep, heavy seep, running leak. A review of accident-related data indicates that approximately 75 to 80% of all aviation incidents are the result of human error. Of those accidents, what percentage are maintenance-related? About 12%. What are some forms of communication used during shift change? Verbal and written communication. What is pair? People, environment, assets, reputation. What is SUPS? Suspected unapproved parts. These would include automotive parts, hardware, store bolts, etc. What are the different types of human error? Human error can be grouped into omission, commission, and extraneous errors.
Define the term aspect ratio. Aspect ratio is the length or span of an airfoil to its width or chord. What is the formula for the area of a rectangle? Area equals length times width. What is pi? Pi is a constant, 3.1416, and it is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter of any circle. What is the formula for the circumference to the diameter of any circle? Circumference equals pi times diameter. What is the formula for the area of a circle? Area equals pi times radius squared. What is the formula for the volume of a cylinder? Volume equals pi times radius squared times height. What is the formula used for finding the volume of a rectangle? Volume equals length times width times height. What is the root of a number? The root of a given number is the base number that when multiplied by itself one or more times will produce the given numbers. For example, the root of 4 is 2. Give examples of perfect square numbers. 4, 9, 16, 64, 100, 144. What is a squared number? A number that is multiplied by itself. For example, the square of 2 is 4. How do you express a decimal as a percent? Move the decimal 2 places to the right and add the percent sign. For example, 0.75 is 75%. Using the powers of 10, how is 1 million expressed? Ten to the sixth power. What is scientific notation? Representing very large or small numbers using powers of 10. What is the sum of a large negative number and a small positive number? Subtract the smaller number from the larger number and use the sign of the larger number in the answer. How is a ratio expressed? A ratio may be expressed as a fraction, or it may be written using the colon. What is a proportion? A ratio that describes the relation between two objects of different dimensions. How do you divide one fraction by another? By cross-multiplying. What is a quadrant? It is 1/4 of a circle. What is a right angle, obtuse angle, and acute angle? A right angle is an angle of 90 degrees, an obtuse angle is an angle greater than 90 degrees, and an acute angle is an angle of less than 90 degrees. What is a polygon? A closed shape that is made up of 3 or more sides. What is a parallelogram? A four-sided object with two pairs of parallel sides. What is the hypotenuse of a triangle? It is the long side that is opposite of the 90-degree angle. What is a mixed number? It is a whole number followed by a fraction. How can a decimal number be changed to a fraction? Multiply the decimal value by the desired denominator. The result will be the numerator of the fraction. Name some types of triangles. Isosceles, equilateral, scalene, obtuse, acute, and right. What is an equilateral triangle? An equilateral triangle is a triangle in which all three sides have the same length. What is a trapezoid? A quadrilateral having one pair of parallel sides. What are positive and negative numbers called? Integers. Convert .666 continuing into a fraction. Two-thirds. Two gears with teeth on their outer edges act like what class of lever? They act like a first-class lever. What is matter? Anything that occupies space and has mass. What are the different states of matter? Solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. What are two types of fluids? Liquids and gases. When a fluid passes through the middle section of a venturi, what pressure and velocity changes occur? Pressure drops and velocity increases. Are liquids compressible? No. What is the standard atmospheric pressure at sea level? (14.7 psi or 29.92 inches of mercury. What is the standard day temperature? (59 degrees Fahrenheit). What is the name of the atmospheric phenomenon where cool air is trapped near the Earth by warm air? A temperature inversion. What is the speed of sound through the air under standard sea level conditions? It is 662 knots or 761 miles per hour. What is meant by the density of air? The mass of a given volume of air. What determines the density of air? The temperature and the pressure acting on it. What does specific gravity mean? It is the ratio of a substance's density to the density of pure water. What are the three basic parts of a lever? The fulcrum, force of effort, and resistance. What is a first-class lever? And give an example. A first-class lever is when the fulcrum is located between the effort and the resistance. An example of a first-class lever is a seesaw. What type of lever is a wheelbarrow? A second-class lever. In what direction is force transmitted to a confined liquid? Force is transmitted equally in all directions because it cannot be compressed. What is the formula for computing force, pressure, and area? Force equals pressure times area. What is kinetic energy? Energy in an object created from its movement. What is potential energy? Energy that is stored and can be turned into kinetic energy. What is absolute zero? It is the temperature at which all motion of the atoms will cease entirely in a given sample of gas. It is negative 273 degrees Celsius. What are the two factors involved in work? Force and movement through a measurable distance. How is pressure expressed in hydraulics and pneumatics? It is expressed in pounds per square inch. Name the forms of energy that can be converted into heat energy. Mechanical, electrical, chemical, radiant, nuclear, and solar. What are the three methods of heat transfer? Conduction, convection, and radiation. What are the three types of friction? Rolling, sliding, and static. What are the four forces experienced by an aircraft in flight? Gravity, thrust, lift, and drag. What is an autorotation? An autorotation is when the helicopter rotor blades spin without engine power as air flows through the rotor. How does blade flapping help compensate for dissymmetry of lift in helicopter main rotor systems? By increasing the angle of attack on the retreating blade and decreasing the angle of attack on the advancing blade. What is the name of the imaginary line that runs from the leading edge to the trailing edge of an airfoil? Chord line. What function do wing-mounted vortex generators serve? Vortex generators prevent airflow separation from the upper surface of the wing. What is directional stability? The ability of an aircraft to avoid yawing. What is magnetism? Motion of an electric charge, resulting in attractive and repulsive forces between objects. What are the different ways to measure temperature? Fahrenheit, Celsius, Kelvin. What is the definition of friction? Opposition to the relative movement between two objects. What is the term used to describe the ratio of the amount of water vapor actually present in the atmosphere as compared to when the air is saturated with water vapor? Relative humidity. What is a longitudinal airspeed described as? Velocity. What is the purpose of stall strips on the leading edge of an airplane wing? Stall strips cause a disruption to the airflow as the angle of attack increases, causing the inboard section of the wing to stall before the outboard wing. What is meant by resonant frequency of an aircraft structure? The frequency that produces the greatest amplitude of vibration in the structure. What is FAA Form 8100-2? It is a standard airworthiness certificate. What is the definition of airworthy and where can it be found? Airworthy means the aircraft conforms to its type design and is in a condition for safe operation. The definition is found in Title 14 CFR Part 3. What is the definition of time in service with respect to maintenance time records? Time in service means the time from the moment an aircraft leaves the surface of the earth until it touches down at the next point of landing. What are the record requirements after performing maintenance? Description of work performed or reference to data acceptable to the administrator. Date of completion of the work performed. Name of the person performing the work. Signature, certificate number, and kind of certificate. What are the record requirements after complying with a 100-hour inspection? Type of inspection and brief description, date and aircraft total time, signature, certificate number, and kind of certificate, and an I certify statement. What are the record requirements after compliance with an airworthiness directive? Method of compliance, AD number and revision date, aircraft total time, date and aircraft time, date when the next action is required if it is reoccurring, date, signature, certificate number of the person approving the work. Where should the description of a major repair or major alteration be recorded? In the correct logbook and on the FAA Form 337. What is the disposition of the two FAA Form 337s after they are completed? You must give one copy to the aircraft owner and one copy is sent to the FAA Flight Standards District Office in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What regulation authorizes a certificated mechanic with an IA to approve or disapprove a major repair or alteration? Title 14 CFR Part 65.95. Who is required to make the entry in the aircraft records after a 100-hour inspection has been performed? The appropriately rated and certificated mechanic that performed the work. How long must the record of a 100-hour inspection be retained by the owner or operator? Until the work is repeated or superseded by other work, or for 1 year after the 100-hour inspection was performed. Where can a mechanic find the required data for a 100-hour inspection maintenance record entry? Title 14 CFR Part 43.11. What is the minimum scope and detail that a checklist must contain when performing a 100-hour inspection? The checklist must include at least the items covered in Title 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix D. Where is a 100-hour inspection recorded? In the maintenance record of the applicable equipment, such as the airframe, engine, or propeller logbook. When must an inspection entry contain the aircraft total time? When an inspection entry or AD entry is made. When an aircraft is sold, what is done with the aircraft records containing the status of airworthiness directives? All records containing the status of ADs must be transferred to the owner at the time of sale. What type of maintenance record entry is required when an inspection under 14 CFR Part 91.417 is made to a large airplane or turbine engine powered multi-engine airplane and defects are found? The entry must name the kind of inspection, and a signed and dated list of defects found must be given to the owner. Who may make a maintenance record entry for approval for return to service after a progressive inspection is performed? An airframe repair station, inspection authorization, or the manufacturer. What are the required entries in a new maintenance record for an engine that has been rebuilt and granted zero time by the manufacturer or by an agency approved by the manufacturer? A signed statement with the date of rebuild, each change made as required by AD, each change made in compliance with the manufacturer's service bulletin if specifically requested in the service bulletin. What is an AD summary? A list of all airworthiness directives that pertain to an aircraft. What are AD frequencies? An update. They are issued bi-weekly. Who is authorized to perform an annual inspection? An inspection authorization. Can a certified A&P mechanic supervise an unlicensed person to perform a 100-hour inspection? No. Only a certified A&P mechanic can perform a 100-hour inspection. What is meant by a progressive inspection? It is a type of inspection program that must be approved by the local Flight Standards District Office that allows an annual or 100-hour inspection to be segmented into various scheduled inspections. The purpose of a progressive inspection is to minimize the downtime an aircraft experiences during inspections. Who is authorized to rebuild and grant an aircraft zero time in the maintenance record? Only the manufacturer, or an authorized representative of the manufacturer. What is ATA 100 system? A numbering system that is designed to standardize technical data regardless of the manufacturer. How long do you keep temporary maintenance records? You must keep temporary maintenance records till they are repeated, superseded, or for 1 year. Who can sign off an annual inspection when the airplane is deployed? An airframe and power plant mechanic. What is the purpose of airworthiness directives? They are used to notify owners and mechanics of conditions that prevent a product or part from being in an airworthy condition. What FAA publication is used to notify aircraft owners of unsafe conditions? Airworthiness directives. When must airworthiness directives be complied with? All ADs must be complied with in accordance with the compliance requirements set forth in the AD. When is the summary of ADs published? Every other year. Are ADs automatically issued to certificated mechanics? No, they are issued to owners. Where can you find a list of approved engines for use in specific model aircraft? The type certificate data sheet. Where can the dimensional tolerances be located for a wrist pin installed in an aircraft engine? In the overhaul manual for that engine. Where can the empty weight of an airplane be located? In the aircraft's weight and balance logs. Where can you find airworthiness standards for normal category airplanes? Title 14 CFR 23. Where can you find airworthiness standards for transport category airplanes? Title 14 CFR 25. What federal regulation defines the requirements for the issue of type certificates? Title 14 CFR 21. Where would you look to find out if a specific airplane can be certified in more than one category? The type certificate data sheet. What publications issued by airframe, engine, and component manufacturers notifies aircraft owners of design defects? Service bulletins. What publication contains complete instructions for maintenance of all systems and components installed in an aircraft? The manufacturer's aircraft maintenance manual. What manual is prepared by the manufacturer for technicians who normally perform work on products, parts, and systems while installed in the aircraft? The aircraft maintenance manual. Who is responsible for ensuring that only the most current information is used when performing any maintenance on an aircraft? The person authorized to approve the maintenance. What are FAA advisory circulars? They are non-regulatory FAA publications that expand upon and explain existing rules and regulations. When are service bulletins considered mandatory? When they are referenced within an airworthiness directive. On older aircraft, for which manuals are not available, what publication could be used to inspect and maintain the aircraft? The AC 4313. Are statements included in the Federal Aviation Regulations mandatory or optional to be complied with? They are mandatory. When would you have to complete 3 FAA Form 337s? When installing extended range fuel tanks in the baggage or passenger compartment. One is given to the owner, one is sent to the FAA within 48 hours after the aircraft is approved for return to service, and one is placed on board the aircraft. What is the purpose of a minimum equipment list? The MEL permits aircraft to be flown with inoperable, non-essential equipment long enough for repairs to be made. At what weight is an aircraft classified as large? Any aircraft more than 12,500 pounds maximum certificated takeoff weight. What is the normal disposition of the FAA Form 337 when there are no extended range fuel tanks? One copy is given to the aircraft owner or operator, and the other copy is sent to the FAA. What is a MSDS, or more commonly called an SDS? A material safety data sheet, or safety data sheet, is a document that contains information on the potential hazards and how to work safely with the chemical product. What is a FAA advisory circular? Advisory circulars are informational documents produced by the Federal Aviation Administration to inform and guide institutions and individuals within the aviation industry, as well as the general public. Advisory circulars are intended to be informative in nature and not regulatory. However, many times they describe actions or advice that the FAA expects to be implemented or followed. Which federal regulation prescribes the certificate requirements for a mechanic? Title 14 CFR Part 65. What is the minimum age for an A&P mechanic certificate? (18) What are the two ratings that can be issued to a mechanic certificate? Airframe and power plant. What are the limitations of a certified mechanic regarding aircraft instruments? A mechanic may not calibrate or make any repairs or alterations to aircraft instruments. What are the privileges and limitations of a certified mechanic regarding propellers? A power plant mechanic may make minor repairs and alterations, but may not make major repairs or major alterations to propellers. What type of work may a certificated mechanic accomplish on aircraft? They may perform or supervise maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations. When a mechanic has a permanent change of address, what must be done within 30 days after the change? They must notify the administrator of the FAA in writing or online at www.faa.gov. What is the duration of the certified mechanic? It is effective until surrendered, suspended, or revoked. How long is a temporary mechanic certificate in effect? For a period of 120 days. What is used as a guide to determine if a repair is a major or minor repair? Title 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix A. What are the requirements of recent experience for a mechanic? A certificated mechanic must supervise or perform maintenance for at least 6 months out of every 24 months. What may be used as a guide for a 100-hour inspection? Title 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix D. What are the privileges of a certified mechanic regarding performing 100-hour inspections and returning an aircraft to service? A certified A&P mechanic may perform a 100-hour inspection and return the aircraft to service by making the proper entries in the maintenance records. What are the privileges of a certified mechanic with respect to an annual inspection? A certificated A&P mechanic with an inspection authorization may perform an annual. Can an A&P supervise personnel without an A&P certificate in performing maintenance and/or 100-hour inspections? An A&P may not supervise a 100-hour inspection. Who has final responsibility for maintaining aircraft maintenance records? The owner or operator of the aircraft. May an airframe mechanic perform maintenance on engines? Yes, under the supervision of a power plant mechanic. What privileges are given to power plant mechanics in addition to the ability to perform maintenance? They may perform a 100-hour inspection on a propeller or engine. What maintenance can a pilot perform, and what are the limitations? They may approve an aircraft for return to service after performing preventative maintenance. How long must a mechanic wait before reapplying for their A&P certificate after losing their certification? One year. What should you do if your temporary certificate becomes older than 120 days? Contact your local Flight Standards District office. Who must approve for return to service radio equipment installations made in accordance with supplemental type certificates? Any inspection authorization. Where would you look to find symbols in the FAR? (14 CFR Part 1.2). What is I-Spec 2200? ATA Spec 100 and I-Spec 2200 are information standards for aviation maintenance and flight operations. Current I-Spec 2200 comprises a suite of data, specifications, and data modules for the digital representation and exchange of technical data. What is a supplemental type certificate? FAA approval to modify a product from its original design. What are the two types of airworthiness directives? AD and EAD. The weight and balance system commonly employed among aircraft consists of three equally important elements. What are they? Weighing of the aircraft, maintaining the weight and balance records, and the proper loading of the aircraft. What is the datum and its purpose when making weight and balance computations? It is an imaginary vertical line or plane from which all measurements are taken, both forward and aft, to determine the relative location of items in the aircraft. What items concerning weight and balance could be found in the type certificate datasheet? D. Cubs flew. D. Datum. C. CG limits. U. Unusable fuel and oil. B. Baggage capacity. S. Seat locations. F. Fuel capacity. L. Leveling means. E. Engine horsepower. W. Weight, maximum weight. What is the purpose of weight and balance control? For safety and efficiency in flight. When computing weight and balance, what is the moment and how is it obtained? Moment is a force which tends to rotate the aircraft about one of its axes. It is obtained by multiplying the weight of an item by the distance of the item from the datum. It is expressed in inch-pounds. How would a negative moment be obtained forward of the datum? By adding weight. What is the arm of an item and how is it obtained? The arm is the distance an item is located either forward or aft of the datum. It is obtained either by actual measurement or from the aircraft weight and balance records. What is tare weight and how is it handled when making weight and balance calculations? Tare is the weight of extra equipment used for weighing the aircraft, such as chocks, blocks, jacks, and chains. Tare weight must be subtracted from the scale readings to obtain the empty weight of the aircraft. What is meant by minimum fuel, and how is it calculated for weight and balance? The amount of fuel needed for an extreme condition check to see if the center of gravity will be out of limits in that situation. For a reciprocating engine airplane, the calculation is maximum accept takeoff horsepower divided by 2. What is meant by residual fuel? It is the fuel remaining in the tanks, sumps, lines, and engine after draining. It is part of the aircraft's empty weight. What is meant by the center of gravity range? It is the distance in inches from the most forward acceptable center of gravity to the most rearward acceptable center of gravity. What is an aircraft loading graph? A method for determining load distribution so that the aircraft remains within its operating CG range. How would you determine the empty weight and the empty weight CG of an aircraft if all weight and balance records are missing? Reweigh the aircraft and calculate new weight and balance records. What is the difference between fixed wing and rotor wing aircraft CG ranges? Most helicopters have a more restricted CG range. When weighing an aircraft to determine the empty weight CG, what must you do regarding the fixed equipment which is normally carried in the aircraft? All operations equipment, whether it is required, optional, or special equipment, must be included in the aircraft's empty weight. Why do some manufacturers specify an empty CG, even though aircraft are not operated at empty CG weight? When the empty weight CG falls within the empty weight CG range, it is unnecessary to perform a weight and balance check if standard loading and seating arrangements are used. Why must the aircraft category be considered when computing weight and balance? Some aircraft are certified in both normal and utility categories. This means a different maximum allowable gross weight depending on which category the aircraft will be operating in for that day. Where is the center of gravity located in relation to the aerodynamic center of lift for most airplanes? In front of the center of lift. What are two common ways of representing the CG of an aircraft? Inches from the datum, or percentage of mean aerodynamic chord, percentage of Mach. Is there a federal regulation that requires the regular reweighing of private aircraft? No. Where must a record of the most recent empty weight and center of gravity be kept? It should be maintained in the aircraft flight manual or weight and balance records. What should be done regarding aircraft fuel when performing a weight and balance when draining is not an option? When weighing an aircraft with full fuel tanks, the exact weight per gallon should be verified with a hydrometer. Then the weight of the unusable fuel must be mathematically subtracted in the weight and balance calculations. How should aircraft fuel be drained for weight and balance? Level the aircraft per the type certificate datasheet, then drain the fuel system until empty, which will leave unusable fuel in the system. What is ballast? Ballast can be lead bars, metal plates, shot bags, sandbags, or other items of weight which are placed in the aircraft to attain a desired CG. If the forward CG limit of an aircraft is exceeded after installing several items in the engine compartment, how could the limit be returned to limits without removing or changing any of the newly installed equipment? By adding ballast weights in the rear of the aircraft. What are the placard requirements for a ballast? The ballast location must have a placard stating any limitations on contents, including weight, that are necessary under the loading requirements. What is recommended for marking of permanent ballast? In red paint, mark with permanent ballast, do not remove. How should an aircraft be leveled for weighing during a weight and balance? It should be leveled per the requirements of the aircraft specifications or type certificate data sheet. Name one common method of leveling an aircraft during weight and balance. Using a spirit level at the manufacturer's designated leveling points or use of a built-in leveling scale or protractor and plumb bob. Describe a plumb bob and its use. It is a heavy object in the shape of a cone that is used to determine a spot directly below the point the tool is hanging from. How can you determine if a part will affect the CG without weighing the aircraft? The effect can be determined by basic computations if the weight and balance records are up to date. What does the term mean aerodynamic chord refer to? The Mach is the average chord or distance from the leading edge to the trailing edge of an airfoil. Why is accurate, up-to-date empty weight CG data so important? All other weight and balance calculations are based on empty weight CG. Before a helicopter is weighed, it must be leveled in what directions? Longitudinally and laterally.